Stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward, do forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble.
I'd like to welcome Sarah Harmer to the Stumble Forward. Sarah is a Juno award-winning, platinum and gold-selling singer, songwriter, and environmental activist. Sarah's unmistakable voice and unique flowing melodic style has lifted her to icon status in Canada. Her years of tireless activism have also been nationally recognized, and her perseverance has resulted in many positive outcomes for the cases she's been involved in pursuing. I'm very honored and grateful to be able to chat with her today. Please welcome Sarah Harmer. Hi, Sarah.
Good day, Hawksley. Hi.
Hi. So there you are. Is this your house that we're seeing?
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of it? Are you seeing the dirty dishes and stuff? I had to move my cam. No, okay. I had to move my camera for the sun moving around here. So
it's
who
beautiful.
knows what you're seeing?
I can't believe you have dirty dishes. That doesn't seem like you. Is that you?
It's me. Yeah. Dishwasher went on the fritz a few years ago.
It's nice to talk with you. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to chat about. I listened to your 2004 record again this morning, All of Our Names, because I remember when you played on Ellen. What was the single you played the song on?
Yeah, we played Almost.
Almost. Man, that's a great track. And when I listened to that again this morning, it hit me that I'm still hearing that on my local indie rock station. It's still out there. It must be getting...
Where do you live?
I live in Peterborough, and our local radio station is independently owned, and they do what they like. So we kind of...
Right on.
Yeah, I know. It's great, right?
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, that record we made just here, like at the homestead. So yeah, I'm glad that it's... Thank you.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Let's talk a bit about the 2020 record, Are You Gone? And the fact that it felt like you were one of those artists who had built up after 10 years of sort of not releasing music. This was the big, let's get back into the game. And that it just happened right as COVID was sort of deciding that it was going to take everybody's plans and rewrite them. So what was that like? I mean, how much anticipation, what had gone into the sort of the building of that record, and even in your own mind, kind of rebuilding the inner architecture to kind of get back on that treadmill or start pushing that rock back up a hill? It must have been kind of a build up to a bit of a what was that?
Yeah, it had taken me a while to just commit to like getting into the studio and making something of these ideas that I had in my head, and some of them half written, some of them fully written for years. And so, honestly, the feeling I had mostly was that I was just very happy that I had, it's like when the inertia it's like when you just start the ball rolling and the momentum starts, and finally you're like, oh, I'm back in this, and I can see that I remember this, and it felt really great. And I mean, the pandemic obviously messed with touring plans, but I was pretty content at home anyways, so I was kind of just mostly happy that I could share this record, and the record got out there and could get into people's ears, and so that was, I'm glad that it got done in time to be released for that. I think if it hadn't come out and then I was in limbo, I don't know, I was just happy that I could share something that had been in my mind for a long time. And aside from the not being able to get out and tour, which I was kind of gearing up for, I was doing sit-ups and yoga and
yeah.
Aside from that, I just kind of happily went back into my, comfortable hermit state for a few more years.
And how you've been branded with this comfortable hermit state, which is an interesting branding in some ways. It's not like, have you been working towards that branding, or that's just by accident, huh?
I don't know if it's no, it's not an intentional branding. It's just true. I'm just a bit of I don't know. It's just, I guess maybe it's just me talking about myself when asked. I'll just honestly say that I'm happy, to not get in my car for a few days on end and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, that feels normal. I feel like that sounds about what most touring people feel like. It is, it's Sisyphean. Like, you are pushing that rock up a hill. You do wake up the next day and have to push that rock up a hill the second day and day and day and day. And it is a wonder though. I saw the last tour. Once you finally got on the road, I saw the Peterborough show and it was a beauty.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah,
Thanks.
and the love in the room for you was obvious. You know, when I think back to you started in the game before me, but you were somehow adjacent to and connected to the cohort that I was in the early 2000s when I was kind of starting out. And I feel like when you put out the You Were Here record, Basement Apartment and Don't Get Your Back Up went to radio and did something that we hadn't seen anybody in our cohort do, which was like crossover from the Queen Street indie thing where we were all uh the prizes and the stakes were obvious. We were all playing quite a similar game, and then you sort of transcended. You'd done things that I felt like our community hadn't done. Like you and Gavin had put drum loops behind stuff. It was like a very new feeling. Like it was like, oh, this person has decided they want to play the game at a higher level, and you did, and it worked. What was the thinking behind all that back in those days? I know it's a long time ago, but do you remember kind of that feeling of, wow, this thing is starting to happen? It must have been quite exciting.
I do, yeah. And, a lot of it came down to Pete Prolesnik, who I made the record with.
Oh, it's Pete. Okay, right.
Yeah, and Gavin Brown played drums on a few tracks, and that's how I met Gavin, was through Pete.
Right.
So, it was definitely a record that we made like in a beat up old warehouse in like Queen and Lansdowne, and it was not high budget, glamorous. It was pretty grotty. Making the record, it was challenging. But yeah, Pete is when he's into it, he really had a lot of talent, and so he elevated, Basement Apartment. I had made that song, recorded it with Weeping Tile, but I played it for him when he and I were. He made a record with Kate Fenner and Chris Brown called Other People's Heavens, which was really sparse and beautiful and so powerful. And that's why I wanted to record with him. And yeah, and I guess he heard the Basement Apartment. He's like, I want to make that. Let's do that song again. And Don't Get Your Back Up was a really old song that I recorded with the Saddle Tramps. When I was, so it was a little bit like of going back through my luggage of the closet of stuff that I'd done, and it did feel like it was, yeah. I mean, I hear that record sometimes now, and I still really appreciate the production and just the simplicity, but the power of it. And also I think getting the guy in the States who was working at Rounder Records, the head of Rounder, John Verant, he heard the record. And also that really helped it, because he really championed it, and it meant a lot to him personally. So I got to play in the States a bunch, and that definitely gave, kind of stepped it out of the neighborhood a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to watch. And now in hindsight, I realized that, I caught the tail end of the record business proper, the old fashioned record business. You also were sort of living in the last sort of moments of glow of that, and winning at it as well. Like, are you looking at the business now as somebody who still sort of is involved? Like, it's not like you're not out with major touring commitments every year or anything, but you're a player in the business. What do you think of the way the business looks now compared to when you were sort of starting back then? Are you cognizant? Are you watching this stuff? I mean, you've got your niece, I guess, is it Georgia, who's out doing this thing again? I mean, did you say you're crazy to want to do this, or where are you at with all of that?
I'm not really a business person. I don't, songs, the joy of playing music with your friends, beating around in an old van, driving around, playing shitty shows, hauling gear, like that is the romance of it that I won't ever not like. I don't know. I always, I don't know if it's because I'm the youngest kid in my family and I hung out with older people a bunch, but I always feel like a kid. I'm just doing it. I'm just starting out, and I know that might be a weird. People be like, eye roll. Yeah, you've been doing this for 20 whatever years. You're not like the underdog new guy or whatever, but I still have that feeling of the excitement of it is just, is playing, to small crowds and new venues, and like I still like that a lot. And so the business side of it, yeah. What I don't really like is like that. I'm not like, just with our conversation, people don't know this, but like behind the scenes, my browser was so out of date. We couldn't really have an initial proper conversation, and like just being the jack of all trades to be the promoter, the publicist, the tech person, the this, the that. Like I feel for artists like Georgia, my niece, coming up, because there's a lot of balls to be juggling. And back in when we were starting out, there was an infrastructure of people who were into promotion and into publicity and into all the various aspects of the music biz, which now gets really saddled onto the individual artist to be the promoter. And like I'm a terrible promoter. I forget to invite people to things, and like I'm just not very good at it, or I don't like it. So I do kind of bemoan the fact that that's expected of musicians now, and because there isn't that infrastructure. Not to say that the like major label, ecosystem was all that conducive sometimes to the muse, but yeah, I don't know. For me, it still comes down to like a melody and a song, and that just feels like fuel. And if I got that in the tank, then that can then it can go from there.
Where did this come from? It feels it's enviable, because I even feel like, again, coming from a similar cohort, not exactly the same, but being adjacent to, you seem to have been somebody within our general group that you've called the shots in your own career. I mean, that's how it looks, of course, from the outside, insofar as if you felt like taking a couple of years between records, you did, or if you felt like taking some time off to pursue, a passion within activism, that's what you did. Well, I think I look at me, and, I've been in the fight. It feels like pushing that thing. And then I look at how you've been, but then I think too, when I saw your show in Peterborough, the relaxed energy of who you are on stage, it puts the whole room at ease. Like I think about your melodies. I went listening to the record, your 2004 record, like I said this morning, like there really is nobody that sings like you. Nobody has that timbre. Plus, whatever it is, that watery kind of, there's a lot of movement in your melody. It's not even that doesn't sort of hearken to anybody specifically. We can go, oh yeah, Sarah Harmer is doing the so-and-so thing. You're very much doing your own thing, which again, all of these things start to add up to, wow, there's a true artist living here inside of you. And we have to I have to be impressed by that, because I feel, I don't know if you were looking at the Twitter, but Hayden Sweppen had mentioned the other day on the Twitter about the hoopla around the Tracy Chapman performance at the Grammys. And he said, the crazy thing is that back in the day, great talent singing great music used to be what we did, fast forward to a more materialist culture, sort of on here today, gone later today type culture. And we're not investing in quality in the same kind of way. Do you feel like your connection to your gardens, your nature, the outdoor stuff, the investment in those extremely tangible, real stuff, does that keep you in the real more than, let's say, if you just were sort of throwing whatever you could at this industry to try and make it work, doing TikTok dancing or whatever it would take? Like, is your connection to something outside of the insanity of it all what makes you make more sense to everybody when you're in front of them?
Maybe. With just bringing up Tracy Chapman, and just even like thank you for the compliments as far as my voice and melodies and stuff. But like, I remember listening to Tracy Chapman and then recording myself and listening back to it later, being like, whoa, I can really tell I was listening to Tracy Chapman a lot, or like Gord Downey, or like I can hear my influences, Suzanne Vega, like people that I loved and still love. So it comes from somewhere, or the Breeders, and I hear different things. I'm like, oh yeah, I can hear, because the voice is such a malleable thing. It does change, it really has changed for me from when I was singing in Weeping Tile over loud guitars and like really just with the ambition and drive to like hear me, like I really had so much drive, as a 23-year-old or whatever. And definitely, yeah, I've been super privileged to live in a peaceful country as a white, well-off woman with a supportive family. Like I'm not struggling to, make my mark to, I have comforts that give me some elbow room. And so, but yeah, I think maybe you got to have stuff to write about too, right? Like, and so I feel like having other interests, and definitely when I started to get involved with like land use issues, up on the Niagara Escarpment, I started going and putting meetings together with local community neighbors. Initially, I was like, oh God, this isn't very sexy. I thought this was going to be like, we're going to start this community group. It's going to be super cool. It's going to be all, great. We're going to have great graphics and it's going to be like, we're going to kick ass. And it was like, oh, all these people are, 65 and they're retirees and they're like, but what that kind of led me to realize is that like there are so many different walks of life. There are so many different people that I otherwise wouldn't necessarily interact with being in a band and playing music and stuff. And so it just kind of widened my horizons and made me, I got more interested, more passionate in different things than music. And I think that's kind of maybe a common trajectory for people as they get older and get involved in have kids or like get involved in the wider scope of the world. But then it also makes me want to come back and put the blinders on and really try to channel that into another batch of songs.
What was the final outcome, or what have been the outcomes of the Niagara Escarpment? Like, can you remind us? I feel like there was a finality some years ago, and can you remind us what did happen? No, there wasn't. Okay.
Well, yeah, there was a finality in 2012. The Ontario Municipal Board, which is like the quasi-judicial board that regulates and makes decisions on land use issues. It ruled in favor of protection for Mount Nemo, which is part of the Niagara Escarpment in Burlington. It basically dismissed Lafarge's massive quarry proposal, and that was after like an 8-year-long fight to save the wetlands and the species and the farmlands and stuff. So that was in 2012, and like the community rejoiced. We fought with everything we had, and then in 2019, Lafarge Nelson Aggregates came back and said, we're going to try again on the same piece of land, and also in another even bigger section of land. So it's even a worse proposal at the top of the watershed in North Burlington. And so it's a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve, a community group which is a lot of the same people that was part of Pearl, called Core Burlington, CORE Burlington. You can look them up because they're just a tried and true grassroots bunch of neighbors and community members who have come together to once again raise money, to raise science, to fight this thing again in what's now called an Ontario Land Tribunal. So we're kind of at the beginning process of that hearing. City of Burlington has rejected the Nelson Lafarge proposal. And so we're just in the process now of going through. It's a very unjust process because citizens and communities spent thousands, millions, like with the city's money, all this resource to protect what ostensibly is protected. They're provincially significant wetlands, but we've got the Ford government now that have been trying to, have been successfully creating big loopholes in our Endangered Species Act and with our protections for wetlands, et cetera. So I think the aggregate industry, the gravel mining industry, sees a very permissive environment right now it's all provincial at the provincial level. And so they're trying to land grab, they're going bonkers with the amounts of gravel mining proposals that they're putting out there. So also one last thing, there's a coalition of community groups that just formed 2 years ago called the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition, so RGMC. And there's a great website that tells about the systemic problems across the province with gravel mining and how we've got a glut of available gravel already licensed, and they're just going in. It's a greed. It's a greed thing, basically. So That's a full-time job for a lot of people. And when you see what's, gravel mining, like who wants to get involved in that? It's the most like, God, boring. Ugh. But when you see what they're messing with, and when you see these beautiful wetlands and beautiful Carolinian forests and the Jefferson salamander species, like it's the best of the best remaining land. And that's what fires me up about working on it.
So heavy to hear you talk about all of that. I mean, I don't know if you remember because I had seen you in Hamilton at a Juno's, and we had been in the middle of our own aggregate battle in Berkshire.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about what you're talking about. Is the OMB still, is that still the official board that suffers through all this stuff, or this is the new thing you were talking about, a land?
It's called the OLT now. It's the Ontario Land Tribunal. I think it's virtually the same type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt, I mean, I don't know for you, assembling our sort of ragtag group of local rural folks, when the OMB person, it's almost like they rode in with a cavalry and, and hounds and it felt like such the circus came to town, and it really did feel like there was the energy was that they were very much looking down their nose at these concerned citizens who had, like you said, had pulled out all the stops to generate any money they could in order to gather scientific, the ammunition required to battle back against these very well supported conglomerates that are in doing this stuff. So when in 2012, everybody felt like, great, this is settled. We can go to sleep. Or we can rest in knowing that we've battled, we've won. But did you know that in the background something was ticking away, or was there a sense that these battles are never completely done? Or is that what you've learned, I guess, in the postlude of all this, that these things are never quite complete?
That's what like long-term activists and organizers will tell you, that they wait for people, the elders to die and people to lose interest, and, communities to start focusing on other things. And they'll, and yeah, the Ontario Land Tribunal, there's been assessments done, and they generally fall like heavily in favor of development. It's very difficult for communities to mount cases, but often, when these proposals come forward, they look airtight, they look really slick. They've got planners and hydrogeologists and all these consultants that are really padding everything, and it looks airtight. And then you get your own experts to review, and there's a lot of chinks in the armor often. So no, you got to fight it. You don't know the outcome, but it's a big collective effort. And yeah, it's you lose more often than you win, but hell,
like, is screaming out loud what happens to the youngest of 6 kids, or like, why is this naturally in you? Were your parents activists? Is this...
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is...
No, I think so. I think my mom is a very much worker bee. She's just like, she's very positive person, and she's a bit of a cop. And unfortunately I've inherited a bit of that, and I have to like watch myself, because I don't necessarily want to be like the sanctimonious or whatever, like moral authority on things. And but I do get fired up and I'm competitive. And so I do get fired up when I think people are playing a game, and they're the stakes are really high, and the corporate paradigm, our societies, as you're talking about, much more materialistic, and like we grew up in the 90s. I mean, I still think I don't like corporate sponsorship and all this stuff that waters down beauty and art and truth. And as you said, Huxley, anger is beauty. So yeah, I think it's just in me to get fired up about things.
How does the world see activists at this moment in the first third or so of the 21st century? Like, how do you feel out there? It felt like in the 90s, if you wore that label, or if that label was put on you, there was something, it gurgled with a different color sense of self. Like, it feels like, well, what is the activist universe like nowadays? like, what's the tolerance for activism? What is the ear for activism? Who are activists in the 21st century?
I mean, people, there isn't any kind of course that you go to and get your certificate or anything. Everybody is eligible to engage in a democracy, and you think of people pushing back against, Canada's arming Israel right now, and people pushing back against, I'm not following the Palestine Israeli, hell that's going on very closely because I just don't know that much about it. I'm trying to learn and not look away. But I mean, I'm inspired by people that, Indigenous leaders a lot in Canada, and standing up like just physically to call bullshit and to draw lines in the sand against corporate dominance and against climate, villains or corporate and oil and gas powerhouses that and so I don't know, I admire I'm reading Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, her latest book, and I've been slowly reading it. It's really great, very readable, and it's very it's encouraging to just get back to basics, to work with others, to not timidly look away when the right wing, which is really, coming up strongly in this country, when they're dominating the conversations. So it's to try to really embolden regular folks. And it's a step-by-step thing though. Like, I didn't know anything about community organizing, and back in 2005 when we would put this community group together, it was a big gray cloud as far as how decisions got made at any level of government and how we could get involved. But it's just step by step. It's relationship building. It's really just showing up, I think, is the first thing, is showing up and not acting alone, really working together with people. But there isn't one playbook, I don't think. But there's a lot of people across the country that I'm inspired by. And a lot of them are like Indigenous folks who are they have a strong backbone and keep it simple.
Yeah, lots of fascinating thoughts there. Let's quickly, well, we don't have to do it quickly. We can do it as slowly or fast as we'd like, but let's change channels a little bit, because you've said a couple things that I don't know you well, but I wouldn't have said that Sarah Harmer would tell me that she's competitive, or that you wanted to scream to be heard in your early days, which leads me maybe to some of the spiritual questions I'm asking lately about, did I ever have a dream and or a goal or a focus? Because I feel like in Canada, I was just happy to be involved, and then whatever came my way, I was happy when it did. Have you achieved what you set out to achieve? Did you have a goal that you were dreaming into? Are you living the version of your life that you would imagine for yourself? Is this something you'd already pre-constructed, or how many surprises are you reckoning with in this life that you're living these days?
Well, I thank you for the question, because on some levels, maybe in my mind, I wanted to play. I don't know. It's a weird one, because you're like, oh, I want people to know me. I want to sing in front of I want to be lauded, on the world stage or whatever. And then I'm like, I'm too lazy for that. Like, I don't have the, I just don't have the focus and drive that it would require, and to put aside other things in my life, because there are a lot of sacrifices that come with that kind of ascent, and also, like, I'm not a planner. I really don't think ahead. I'm sure it's going to come back and get me at times, with not having been prepared for some things, but I'm definitely not I don't look ahead much. I don't like planning. I'm even putting like band rehearsals together. I'm like, okay, I gotta, like, I'm not, it's not my wheelhouse. So I don't surprises. I sometimes wonder if there's like already this this sometimes when I come across different things and that seem super serendipitous, I think, wow, was this already like somehow just small things or whatever, but like, was this already like in the works on some other level of energy level or what, And so I don't know. I think living in the country, spending a lot of time slowly observing the same piece of land for 20 whatever years, really gives me enough to focus on and a lot of detail that I just get into the weird, small developments of life around me, and that fills me right up. So the bigger stuff, I think I've kind of like, meh, I'm feel pretty content, for right now anyways. Like things change, but sometimes I do think, and I maybe like a lot of people, like I'm not living up to my capacity. Like I'm not doing enough for other people. I'm not making enough of what I've been given. And so that's the thing that's in my mind from time to time and throughout my adult life.
That's interesting. There was an effortlessness about your way on stage, I'll say, when I saw you in Peterborough, and I'm hearing you talk, and really it's quite fascinating. Again, like having, we weren't like, it's not like we were super pals back in the day, and I'm certainly so reclusive and not part of any Toronto scene at all. I'm not part of anything really. I don't see people, except now that I do these podcasts, I see people on the screen. But I think that for somebody who was watching you from afar and was kind of keeping track of those, again, in my cohort who had managed to manifest some success for themselves, you seemed to have, it's like your resting heart rate was 10 beats per minute slower than the rest of us. Like you had, in a very chill way, moved into this space as like the songwriting representative of a sort of of this cohort. Like it always felt to me like you had a great agency over yourself. And again, this is just observing, as we all do, this assumption that maybe I know more about this person. And of course, so much of that is about you bringing your foibles to the table and then projecting what it is you think that person might be by virtue of what it is you think you're missing, or maybe that is not entirely complete within yourself. And I always saw you, and then I feel like when I reached out to you after the Junos, that I saw you do the Gord tribute with Kevin Hearn. And I remember thinking, oh shit, this person is recognized at a high level for a reason. It's not like there was something so full. You had so much authority on stage. You delivered that performance like a pro, and I was just floored. I watched it again this morning and felt the same way. This isn't getting anywhere closer to a question. It's sort of me ambling around with a realization that you are quite a surprising creature, I think. And can we talk about this thing where you are like, oh, Sarah Harmer and Kingston are sort of connected, but you went to Kingston for university, is that right? So how is it that you now are adopted into this? Because I also find that Kingston energy quite specific. I worked with a Kingston band last year and spent time in Kingston, and as a city, it doesn't feel like any other Ontario city that I know. It's got a particular brand of intensity that I think is quite specific to there. But why Kingston? You stuck around, you sort of put roots down there, and now it sort of feels like you've been kind of co-branded with the city. How does that work?
I'm curious to know how it felt to you because, okay, I came to Kingston because I had three sisters that went to Queens before me. So as a kid, I would come up here and I always thought it was super cool.
Right.
Like I just loved the Coke signs on the corner stores and the hoagie houses. And I'm like, whoa. And the oldness of the city, like the architecture and the sidewalks. And I grew up on a farm. So I was like, to my parents, why didn't you guys settle near Kingston? It's so like, and I love pioneer stories as a kid and like old fashioned stuff. So I was like, this is back in time and I could walk my dog on the street. And I just had this vision of like how cool the city was and just out of time a little bit from what I was used to in the greater Toronto area, And so Yeah, I did move here, yeah, to go to school. And then, I mean, the landscape around Kingston is beautiful.
Yeah.
I live north of the city, and it's just all wetlands and big drainage, ravine, not ravines really, but just big, lots of lakes, beautiful swimming. The wildlife is fantastic. And it is one of those cities. I know it's growing like everywhere, but it has kind of stayed in a bit of a time capsule for many decades. Apparently, just with the university and the Royal Military College and the prisons, there's a sort of a, a not a stagnation, but like a set amount of people and industry that, and it's far enough away from Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa that and it's close to the States too. So it's it did have a special feeling for me, and I worked my little butt off to get into Queens, and then once I got into Queens, I was like, I don't care. I don't care what I take or how I do. I just wanted to move to Kingston, honestly, because as a kid I'd come up here for my birthdays and stuff when my sisters went to school here. But let me ask you, like, you're saying it's a unique feeling, and I think there's probably an edge to it. Like, I'm not sure now how I would feel coming into it as you did, but what was the feeling?
Well, I mean, you itemize all those things. I mean, I sort of feel like as touring people, we have a natural side hustle for understanding the disposition of places because we go to a lot of places.
Yeah.
And I felt like Kingston was that very thing. You have the energy of this sort of like the intellectual reservoirs contained within Queens, and then offshoots within colleges, and then sort of the aggression and sadness and whatever energies come from having a city with several prisons and the cultures that are required to sort of support those prisons. The Royal Military thing is another thing. These are sort of all they're like archetypal almost. Prison, university, army, like those are archetypal influences in a town. So as somebody who kind of moves around a lot, I was overtaken by the intensity of those things converging and how obvious it felt like. And if you're talking about how maybe the city hasn't progressed quite as quickly as elsewhere, I sort of feel like when you have these very strong archetypal forces in a town, I think they're hard to move. I think there's some immovability. The other thing is I listened to a lot of American radio when I was flicking around there working with this band. And so it's obvious you have the FM waves of the American entertainment disposition floating very easily across the water and into that city in a way that makes it feel like it has that American intensity. That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And it doesn't surprise me that the hip came out of there. It doesn't surprise me that Glorious Sons have come out of there. It doesn't surprise me that this hyper poetic yet sort of machismo rock thing, like again, even that, and that was sort of the funny collision of all those archetypes in Gord, who's somebody I'd even love to chat to you about because you brought him up as an influence. And I mean, in your wiki, I'm not sure how thorough that wiki is, but it alleges that your sort of interest in music starts with you and your sister taking you to see the hip. Is that true?
My interest in like rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I was 16 and she took me to tiny little bars around Southern Ontario where we were often like one of 5 people there watching them, and so yeah, for sure. I was, a kid I sang in choirs and I was into musical theater and, for sure. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Love music from the early days, but yeah, seeing the band, seeing those guys and having that connection with them through Mary, that my sister Mary, yeah, that was big time influence. Yeah. And one of the reasons I love Kingston too, for sure, was the lore. Just, when you're, it was good. It was a good thing for me getting off the farm and getting out of like the pull of the Toronto, which I love. I love Toronto and I have my family's all up there, but it was nice to just be apart from it down the other end of the lake.
Yeah, it feels like there's something decidedly legit still about Kingston. Like it feels like bands that come out of Kingston, music out of Kingston comes with some sort of legit stamp. Now, I'm not sure if that was sort of bought by the hip sort of ubiquity, like that, like anything that comes out is somehow has been touched by that energy. But, even I remember even some of the musicians from your band, whenever we would pull through Kingston, the musos that would be out on the guest list would be like, oh, those people again. Yeah, the Kingston people. Those people that all seem to be doing the job, yet have skirted the whole Toronto thing, yet there is this legit universe, it felt like, that is ongoing in Kingston and has its own energy. It sort of perpetuates itself without any interest in Toronto. Is that a true assessment, do you think?
I mean, I don't really know. On one hand, I feel like right now I don't have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in Kingston musically. You know, like there are tons of artists and bands that, I mean, but at the same time, like my dear friend Virginia Clark, she's a promoter. She runs the Grad Club in town, and it's that places like that that don't have they don't make a lot of money. But they have a great sound system. They treat you well. It's like you're going to have an intimate, one of a kind night. You know, it's not just a generic. There's something special about it for sure. And there's many places that are still hopefully holding on in that independent streak. I think that's really important. Like Kingston has a few of those places still that aren't that they feel like there's a lot of care. Mm-hmm. And so. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah. But again, I back in the '90s, there was a Funhouse studio. Our friends opened up the studio in the old Alcan factory and got like an 8-track quarter-inch tape and like figured out how to do it. And like, you know, we built that scene, and the Inbreds and, you know, the Mahones and Hellbillies and like all these great bands that, you know, have a small, aside from the Inbreds, people know them, but maybe generally a small support group. But and I think like places like Hamilton and Guelph and like there's college towns. They can build they build their own scenes. And I was reading about Petawawa. I'm like, Petawawa is north of here a couple hours, but apparently like there's like a real like cultural hub there too, and so. I'm sure it's happening in a bunch of places.
I heard you chatting on a podcast this morning. Not that you were chatting this morning. I was listening this morning about your gardening or your. I don't want to diminish its scale by calling it gardening, but I think even you had said you're not living in a great part of the province for vast amounts of agriculture, but you've been composting for 20 years, and you had made. You had alluded to you're planting your garlic, which before we left our Berks Falls house, our annual garlic thing was a big deal. Where's your garlic at these days?
Oh, it's just on the front yard. But no, I planted it, just got it in the nick of time this year. Good. Because if I lean to one side, you might see this garlic hanging on the wall.
I do. Yeah.
It's way too old. It's not edible anymore. It's just hit the mark. That's from 2 years ago because I didn't plant garlic last year. I missed it, and that's just decorative now. I gotta compost that. But this year I did get on my birthday actually in early November. The ground was still thaw and still able to be planted. So yeah, I got garlic in. Yeah, I just have a pretty small couple of garden, but I've been like. During the pandemic, that did a little no-dig garden class online.
What's no-dig garden?
No-dig? Oh, it's just basically it's what it sounds like. It's like you're not disrupting the microorganisms in the soil. You're top dressing every fall with compost, like a few inches, say, and that's what you plant into the next year. Yep. And so it literally you're not disturbing and disturbing the soil, so you're allowing all the microorganisms to do their thing and create all that, aerate the soil but yeah, you're feeding the soil basically with compost. So yeah, I mean, I grew up on a farm. My parents are Depression era people. My mom was, my parents are still with us. They're like, my dad's back in the 20s now. He's like, he was born in 29. So we're like, Dad, you're seeing the 20s again.
Oh my Lord, really?
Yeah. So, and they were very frugal parents. Like we composted even and anyways, just was very frugal with energy use and all that stuff. So that's in me.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. It reminds me of my grandma and grandparents who delivered what generations get to sort of accumulate and then pass on. That depression era thing is a big deal because I'm so grateful that my grandparents were alive for a good 20 plus years that I was on this planet. And everything you're saying, I learned so much about the coming and going of the seasons, the coming and going of the birds. My grandparents had a massive garden that sort of would shrink every couple of years as they got older and older and had a hard time tending to it. But that that era of the brains, the brains that were created in that era, quite special. I mean, you and I, as 20th century people, we did a majority of our growing in the 20th century pre-internet, and I think that we will also be sort of useful dinosaurs in the not too distant future as people try to figure out, well, how the heck did the world run for, you know, those thousands of years before this huge interruptive force of the internet came along. But things like, I mean, being imbued with the energy of the people who came from that depression era, as you are, and as I'm lucky to be from my grandparents, I mean, it's these sensibilities that we don't realize we lose as those generations fade off. It might even tie into a little bit what I was trying to get at with the activism question about the new generations of activists. There was a natural activism that came from this depression era people who just had a relationship to the way things were in the natural world that it could be mistaken as activism from this vantage point, but from back then it was just how you lived in order to create harmony with your surroundings. Does that sound insane to you, what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound insane.
Oh, yeah.
No, I am just, I say I'm not much of a planner. I'm definitely somebody who thinks about the past a lot. And I think I've always been that way. And so and I think about things that our, ancestors or just our generations before us fought for and secured and understood the risks involved, with fascism, with far right wing, with hyper individualism and hyper capitalism, and how the pendulum swung away from that in the 50s and 60s with like social programs and people looking out for each other and understanding that we're only safe if our community is safe, and all of that. And I think that, yes, you're right. Like that gets lost, and that memory, that institutional or generational memory gets lost. And it is on us to bring that forward. And I think about those people that fought for change, my grandmother, with the United Women's Institute and like pushing for women's rights and all that stuff. And I feel her, like I feel indebted to her, and like I'm overly sentimental for sure about the past, but I do feel that responsibility from people and I feel like I love the idea that they're still here, that those energies are still embodied, and I definitely through the pandemic did a deep dive on like ancestral stuff, and it's just a bit of an obsession for me actually about learning about, because I didn't get to know either of my grandparents. My grandmother was born in 1889. She had my mom when she was 41, I guess, and my mom had me when she was almost 40. So like the big generations. Wow. Yeah. So anyway, I spend a lot of time thinking about what it was like. And I love that about land too, because you're like, this place has seen so much. And I don't know. I love spending time thinking about that.
I do too. And that's, I feel you on I feel you on this stuff. Similarly, I feel like when I'm away from a city for a long time and I get back to a city, when you see that city goes on without you, it's similar to the way what you said earlier about watching a piece of land over 20 years. This piece of land is on its own trajectory, and it has its own relationship to linear time, if linear time even exists. And we sort of step in as humans with these shorter lives, destructive capacities. We can impose our sense of time on these things, but something eternal about everything you're saying. Is your family really close? That this feels like to me that you come from a place where you knew love in a big way. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, my family's really close. Yeah, there's five girls, one boy, and yeah, my mom and dad, and yeah, we all grew up, on a farm, and my folks 53 years on in the same place. So, yeah, I was so super fortunate to have a lot of stability, a lot of support, a lot of love. We're also repressed Presbyterians, so there's shit that we don't, you know there's some unhealthy levels probably of just like stiff upper lip and don't and some judgment. Like I'm trying to work out like always being the judge critic guy, and I see that within my just natural genetic whatever makeup. But yeah, no, very very lucky with my family, and yeah, we're all still really close. So yeah, very lucky.
That's great, Sarah. I shouldn't keep you too long. It's funny though hearing about some of these artifacts. Like, although what you've said, it's quite lovely. It is true. Like, wouldn't we like to go back and perfect some of those things, those aspects, more cumbersome aspects of, again, artifacts that were brought from other times. But the stiff upper lip thing, even, I must admit, I questioned it a lot in my grandparents when I was younger. And as I've gotten older, I'm wondering if it's not a very valuable aspect to your ability to move through it's not denying that things aren't right. It's how you decide to deal with situations. And I feel like I've dealt with situations poorly a lot. And then you wake up to your role and responsibility in your involvement in anything with your life, even, yeah, I want to be the one who feels like I am taking responsibility for these things. And sometimes if you're walking into a version of honesty and re-meeting yourself in a version of honesty, even that requires a bit of a stiff upper lip just to suffer through a version of yourself you didn't want to have to reckon with.
Yeah, beautiful thing about being able to get older too is to see your, like you say, the timeline of a person's life, right? And how that the small purchase that you have for a while, but the humility of that, and but also, yes, I think too, like being resilient and tough about some certain things isn't necessarily to be in denial about all the nuance and detail that's out there, but also to just choose how you're going to like forge through it. And yeah, so there's important things definitely to learn from that. And also I appreciate the sensitivities that like newer generations are bringing forward into discussions about injustices and power dynamics in the world. And I appreciate that. I find sometimes it's like overly sensitive or overly detailed sometimes, but I'm also like, there's lots to learn, and it's interesting to realize like, oh, there's a few generations earlier or like below me now, like younger than me now, that are bringing a lot that I need to keep my mind really open to. So yeah, I want to hang out with younger people a bit more, because I feel like I've been hanging out with like old dusty books of old people for a while. But anyway, my niece, yeah, like you say, Georgia, she's a real force in the early 20s world of new music, but also bringing in a lot from what she's learned, I think, from her parents as well as musicians themselves.
How involved?
In a weird segue.
Well, it's cool to me. I love it. And so, how involved have you been with Georgia? Like, was it a situation where she was at the concerts when she was a little baby with the headphones on, protective earphones, or has she been has she been adjacent to your career all these years? Or
Yeah, but yes, and but more so to her dad
Yeah.
and her mom. Like her dad, Gord, he's a guitar player and has played in bands and would take and her mom, Mary, also plays bass and has played in a bunch of bands, and they would take Georgia to little shows, and she was, just early on, it was she's an old soul. Like she's definitely had her own um, self presence, I think, from the get go as far as being into music and poetry and stuff. So, yeah, it's been she's had a lot of influences, I think, as a young person, but also she's attracted a lot of stuff like as a teenager and a young early 20s. Like she's got her own scene and her own perspectives, obviously, on things. It's not all just come from her upbringing. If that makes sense.
Have you attempted to be the wise sage to say things that may be difficult to hear about this career to Georgia yet? Like I'm doing that a little bit more lately, I guess is what I'm getting. I'm pulling out the grump card from time to time because I'm at a place in my life where I feel like had somebody just told me a couple more things at a certain age, I may have been able to glean what I needed to glean to possibly operate more gracefully within a certain context or whatever.
Yeah.
Are you laying, are you itemizing some of the less savory aspects of what is possibly lurking out there in this career for Georgia, or how are you dealing with that?
I mean, we occasionally talk maybe about no, like I had to ask her. I was going on a tour this fall and a bus tour, and I had to ask her like, how did you? Because she had been on tour as a solo act opening for Tim Baker, I think it was, on a bus tour. So I was actually getting some tips from her as far as like I can't even remember what it was. It was just like, oh yeah, what do you have to do to like the bus because you don't have a bathroom and like for your makeup and I don't know, it's just stupid stuff. So I was getting tips from her. And occasionally we'll chat and she'll be like, oh yeah, I forget, like you've done this, or like she's got a lot of different, I think people around her that are in the music world. So, but yeah, she came up here for a few months during the pandemic and lived up here, which was wonderful. And I hope she can come back. And did some vocals for her record. Like she set up in our little farmhouse and she did some of her last album. She recorded some stuff for it. And I think she's almost got another record ready to go. So no, it's going to be me like hitting her up for tips pretty soon.
I remember somebody telling me way ago that Sarah Harmer doesn't like tour buses. She prefers to tour in a van. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, I would say I don't like idling. I have a real problem with like idling and like diesel jennies and stuff. Being the jerk that's on the sidewalk outside of the club with the engine going. Kills, it hurts me. I hate it. But I mean, sometimes you gotta roll with it. When I did this tour with Josh Ritter in the fall, I had one bunk of 10. Like I was on tour. I was on the bus with the band, the rest, like I was just playing solo. And it was great. It was all like bottled water and tons of garbage and stuff but I also had to be like let that go for a couple of weeks. And I do like touring in a van. I like seeing the countryside and like, I like seeing how to get from one place to another. It feels good. I like road trips, but I try not to be too like hard and fast with my likes and dislikes.
Yeah. I'm with you. The judgment piece you brought up earlier is the big one. I feel like I wanted to just quickly touch on that and that'll leave you be. The judgment thing is big. I don't know where you're at with it, but it's hit me this year that if I can improve by judging myself and others less, I'm talking even 6% less, like I will start to be an ambient spiritual light if that were to occur. It's everything for me these days is to catch myself in those old working class conundrums. I feel like those isms that are sort of bred into us so that we maintain a competitive and somewhat adversarial relationship with our neighbors. And it's this stuff that you start to, these artifacts, the judgment is big. I'm happy to hear that. The judgment is big. That's a big piece.
it's so much of self-judgment when you're projecting it onto other people, and it's just like when I'm in a place when I'm like in a flow of my life and I feel like happy and not stuck in my, bad habits or whatever, and I'm up on the high end of the wave, I don't judge other people in the same way. I don't judge other actions, I notice that I'm much more forgiving and just like understanding and encouraging. And it's when I'm like in a bit of a stuck position or just like feeling like whatever, that's when my judgments of other people are coming out. And it's all like self stuff, I think. So, yeah, it's something to work on.
Sarah Harmer, thank you for chatting. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for asking me, Hawksley. Thank you for all the questions. I feel very flattered and appreciated. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's really an honor. Okay, Sarah, we'll see you out there some way, somehow or other.
See you in Poetboro, or the P dot, as they say.
In the P dot. Let's see you in the P dot then.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
The Stumble Forward is an Isadora Media production and is hosted by Hawksley Workman and produced by Jennifer Kavanaugh. Be sure to subscribe and follow The Stumble Forward. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Hawksley Workman. Thank you for listening.
Stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward. Do forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble.